down in the space in this region, we reside in such diversity that the rates of endemism are some of the highest in the world. We sit at an origin of humanity, where survival, back in the day, pre-colonial, meant generosity and at times euphoric happiness. This in a landscape where minerals, sweet waters, plants, animal nutrition, fungi, spices, medicines have all been in abundance. But most of this knowledge is completely wiped out.
World Food Day is the day that we commemorate the establishment of the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, or FAO, which was established to deal with food insecurity in the wake of World War II. It has been on the global agenda since 1979, and world leaders have continuously struggled with the complex problem of dealing with hunger, growing human populations, and dwindling environmental resources. However, the last FAO report on the state of food security and nutrition estimates that some 2 billion people are suffering from food insecurity around the globe.
I started to consider what good food means. And does it simply come down to taste? If so, which taste? The biological one or the cultural? I enjoy what I do, building flavors with food, especially vegetables, familiar flavors that resonate within individuals' pleasure centers to achieve the best tasting food. These are foods that we love at one go, and then there are foods that we love, that we grow to love. An acquired taste. Think blue cheese, anchovies, dark chocolate, sushi, mopani worms even. Our senses are closely linked when it comes to food. Flavor is closely linked to smell and texture. Scientists have discovered that we can detect 5 senses, and these are salt, sweet, sour, bitter, and umami.
The story of food, pleasure, and poison in Cape Town is one in which starts in the womb and will, I hope, never end in the tomb. My fear is that I will die in Cape Town, and sometimes when one eats out, one does have that feeling that it is going to happen, particularly for a city with water resource problems, and a child who, having been picked by a rooster, is not fond of chickens and therefore has always been squeamish, finds that if one cannot really trust that the water is fresh and that it isn't enough and it may have sillage from the dam in it, has concerns and hypochondriacal responses to food in Cape Town. The tomb seems to me to beckon a little more often than not, which results in my own poisonous relationship to the location.
The Gatsby has been turned into this food that was produced, in response to apartheid. And I mean, histories of food items are so much more complex than that. So it's not just an irritation with that narrow reading of the Gatsby, but an irritation with narrow readings of all food items and their histories. So retrospectively, and Angelo, you spoke about this at the District 6 Museum, the sort of idea of nostalgic food. This nostalgia for what? Something that never really existed in the first place.
There's a difference maybe between corporate science and scientism and actual science. And I think knowledge production has been hugely privatized by corporations who have a very particular agenda, and what they call science is not necessarily science. Pretty much when you hear the term junk science, it's usually coming from corporations who are trying to ensure that their products are not regulated. So for example, you'll always hear that arguments against GMOs are based on junk science, or originally it came from arguments against smoking is based on junk science. And there's a kind of way of hoodwinking the public about what science is and what science inquiry is about, and a way of kind of annihilating the opposition who are trying to bring other aspects about safety of food or other aspects of food to the fore.
just because I enjoyed something as a child, it is necessarily good, and to go back there, it's fantastic. It's your example of the pup phenomenon, where your brother says to you, well, actually, no, you've zhuzhified and bougified pup, but, But we don't ask questions of starch, of experience, of energy levels, etc. It's a kind of, let's celebrate the past because it used to be denigrated by colonial conquerors or by apartheid apparatchiks. And my concern there is, it's not an either or.
We need to actually go out there and find people that are doing this and support their business. And then secondly, again, to do with the government, I think a lot of people became aware of the lack of the government's concern when listeriosis happened, and people suddenly realized that we leave a lot of our regulation or the quality of our foods in the hands of people, and those people don't care. So suddenly we had a lot of people generally just being so conscious about what are we eating, this polony, this meat, this smoked whatever, and it's actually you're consuming that, but who's actually regulating what goes in there and the practices around that?
The eating of certain foods that we used to eat, not everybody in the world, but where it was available, and foods that have become culturally frowned upon, like eating insects that have now become very trendy, and this idea of future food, is because eating these things at times when nothing else was available, or at times where things were scarce, or even in times of abundance, there's very particular nutrition, and not just that, but flavor that comes from these specific places.